Remember all that? So apparently the new Lion King and the old Lion King are fascist, racist, and anti-Semitic. The highly anticipated new photorealistic version of The Lion King is likely to be one of the hottest blockbuster movies of the summer. Every kid is going to want to go see this. But according to the Washington Post, fans of the beloved Hamlet-esque classic of stage and screen have it all wrong. They write this: as nostalgic as Circle of Life may make us feel, this bombastic scene is also a painful reminder of the film's ideological agenda. It introduces us to a society where the weak have learned to worship at the feet of the strong, with the lions standing in for the ruling class and the good herbivores embodying society's decent, law-abiding citizens, and the hyenas transparently represent the black, brown, and disabled bodies that are forcefully excluded from this fascist society. Okay, so let's bring in Michael Knowles of The Daily Wire, host of The Michael Knowles Show, and Richard Fowler, nationally syndicated radio host and a Fox News contributor, of course. Gentlemen, I imagine that you grew up with this original animated classic. And what do you think, Michael? Did you realize that it was all these things?
Who knew? I'm actually just so pleased that for the last 3 years, every American slightly to the right of Hillary Clinton has been called a fascist. Now we're in the same company as a beloved Disney cartoon character. This was the stupidest article I've ever read in the Washington Post, which is truly saying something. It reads like a bad term paper freshman year. The trouble is this was written by a professor, and that tells you all you need to know about higher education. The Lion King is a wonderful story. It is about redemption. It is about grace. It is about endurance. It is based on Hamlet. It's based on the books of Genesis and Exodus. It is not about fascism. But because the left right now has become so culturally illiterate, the only thing that they can ever refer to in their cultural criticism is Hitler. Everything they don't like is Hitlerian or fascist or Nazi. I should also point out this is a very racist article. The author compares black people to hyenas. He even at one point implies that black skin is some sort of disability. Obviously, this is absurd. His main contention is that kingdoms in general are fascistic, so I guess this is news to the Queen in the United Kingdom. This is news for every children's fairy tale or for the books of the Bible. If the left wants to go after kingdoms, I welcome it. They go after the American flag, the 4th of July. Go after the Lion King. I think it's only going to help the right.
All right. Richard, before I go to you, I want to play another scene because I think a lot of people might be scratching their heads, saying, what is this writer referring to exactly? So here's one of the scenes that he is referring to that they claim has Nazi symbolism. Watch this.
You're expected to take certain duties on board. The future is littered with prizes, and though I remain addressee, the point that I must emphasize is you won't get a sniff without me.
So yes, it's true. He's the evil character, and those who are about to follow him are goose-stepping across this part of the Serengeti. Richard, what do you make of all this?
Well, one, I think it's disingenuous to compare, to sort of lump the whole left into this one particular author. I think this one particular author his opinion is very misplaced. Number one, the setting of this movie is in Africa. Number two, the entire cast from this new particular movie is an majority African-American cast, including the likes of Danny Glover, Beyonce Knowles, and in particular, Beyonce Knowles might get an EGOT, right, which is the highest prize that an actor or an artist can ever get for her performance in this particular movie. So I think this, once again, this author's disingenuous. Number two, I think the fact that they casted an entire black cast, the fact that these actors and the voices that they utilized here was impressive, speaks to that. And so I think that, once again, I think this author's misplaced. But I think the mistake that you're making here to lump the whole left in with this particular critic is one, problematic, and I think two, it's disingenuous to say that the entire left feels this way, because I don't feel this way, and I think a lot of folks don't feel this way because they're going to go see the movie this weekend.
Well put. Let me just put one more quote from this up here. I think you guys both agree that you feel like the author of this piece is misguided. He says, doubling down on Disney's historical obsession with patriarchal monarchies, it places the audience's point of view squarely with the autocratic lions, whose pride rock literally looks down upon all of society's weaker groups, a kind of Trump Tower of the African savannah. You know, Michael, I mean, it is laughable, actually, and perhaps what his aim was just to get attention, which I guess we, you know, we can cop to having given him in some ways tonight. But the whole idea that there isn't good and evil, you know, and that there aren't sort of powerful figures in the world. And, you know, one of the things they say in the beginning of the movie, you know, the lessons is that life isn't fair. You know, those are sort of, you know, basic tenets of the kinds of stories that kids read and learn to learn about good and bad in the world.
Of course. This is a deconstruction of everything that we like and we know to be good and true and beautiful. He doesn't like political order. He doesn't like this lovely story and all of the grace and all of those wonderful things that go along with it. I of course, agree. Most leftists I know agree that this is a ridiculous column. But what it does show is a principle that we've seen broadly on the left over the last few years, which is they call everything that they don't like fascist. And part of the reason this column is so stupid is that he just doesn't seem to understand what fascism is. It's a word that has been defined down to nothing. I suggest we retire it entirely from the Washington Post and from the pop culture.
So allow me to push back on that just a little bit. So I think one thing that's very interesting about where I think this author is misguided is if you take a look at, if you understand Africa, right, and the history of the continent, and realize the reason why Africa right now is divided the way it is because it has everything to do with colonialism. And at the time, prior to colonialism, Africa was very tribal, and in that time, tribes had kings, and they had some of the tribes had queens. Some tribes were very matriarchal, right, and some tribes were very patriarchal. So it depended upon the time. The reason why Africa is the way it is now has everything to do with Western civilization and the fact that it was colonialized. So it was actually quite the opposite of what this author is talking about.
Right. Thank you very much. Good input from both of you. Good to see you tonight.